Shalom Aleichem, a good night of Shabbos to everyone. Since this week we began with Hey Teves, I'd like to share some history about the day that most people don't know, and I heard about it just recently. I received a phone call, and it brings to mind the importance of the day. Meaning, Hasidim say that what Yutes Kislev was to the Alter Rebbe, and Yud Beis Tammuz to the Frierdiker Rebbe, Hey Teves is to the Rebbe. I'd like to break that down a little bit and explain it. Yutes Kislev was the victory for Hasidus. Yud Beis Tammuz was the victory for Torah, for Yiddishkeit, for Judaism. And Hey Teves is the victory for the Rebbe, for Rebbehood. That there is a Rebbe. And to understand this, listen to this. After the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, the library was there. What happened to the library from 1950 to 1985? Most people don't know, but the library was intact, and for most years it was controlled by the librarian that the Frierdiker Rebbe appointed, which was Reb Chaim Lieberman. Reb Chaim Lieberman came from a Lubavitch stock, and he was a secretary of the Frierdiker Rebbe, very close to him, and he had knowledge and bibliography, and he was a good librarian, and he had the keys to the library, and he basically ran the library. In 1960 or 61, the following happened. Reb Zalman Geradi would have Yechidus with the Rebbe every year for his birthday. Reb Zalman Geradi had the lineage, the pedigree, the yichus himself. He was an askin, a lamdin, a communal worker, and a scholar, and very much bound and dedicated to Beis Rabbeinu, to the Rabbeim's household, etc. And this started with his ancestors, Shmuel Geradi, and his father and uncles, and continued with him and his brothers. But he, living in Crown Heights and living next to the Rebbe, he stood out in this idea. Anyway, many times during these Yechidus, he was the defender of Lubavitch. The Rebbe would sometimes, as we say in Yiddish, Arop reden sich auf ein Herz. He would kind of, he would talk what's bothering him. For example, one thing I was told, the Rebbe said to him once, the Satmar Rebbe says something and his Hasidim take the reins and they go out, they come to Crown Heights, they go all over to the communities in the middle of the night and they put up posters, they plaster the place with posters that they're making Afghana protest against Zionism. Whatever. The Rebbe wasn't talking about the content of what's being done, he's talking about the activity. That they don't wait for the Satmar Rav, we're talking about Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum, to say go to this in the street and go to this in this pole, or put it on, or don't put it on, how to put it on with scotch tape, or they do it on their own. They know that the Satmar Rebbe, this is a sheet of his, they go out full force. And he says, the Rebbe says, and by me, my Chassidim, they don't do anything, or they do very little until I tell them what to do. Anyway, so Reb Zalman would always defend Lubavitch Chassidim. And this was kind of a dialogue that he and the Rebbe had during the Yechidus. Anyway, in 60-61, the Rebbe says to him, I loan Svarim from the library, and I'm so overwhelmed with writing letters and learning and farbringing and whatever. I'm very busy helping the community, and I don't get a chance to look into the sefer that I loan from the library that I need. And it sits on my desk a week, 2, 3. And the librarian calls me and says, where's the sefer? I need the sefer back. And the Rebbe says, I didn't yet read the sefer, give me another week. He says, fine. A week goes by, I still haven't read the Sefer. And again, he nudges him, and it rate him, and he bothers him. And where he's coming from, he's right, the Rebbe says. You take a Sefer for a certain amount of time, you agree that's the time, give it back. It's the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You're talking about it's the Rebbe. Law and order. There's a library. And then the Rebbe says to Reb Zalman, he says, I will not be mevater on one Sefer. I will not say it's okay that one Sefer isn't under Tachas Nesias, under the Nesias, under the leadership of Lubavitch, meaning under him, who took over from his father-in-law. The implication was that the fact that he has to answer to the librarian shows that the Svarim, the library, is not under his domain, under his leadership, under his Nesias. And the Rebbe says that I'm not going to forsake not even one Sefer. I'm not going to be mavated even one Sefer. After Reb Zalman heard this, he went out of Yechidus, and he arranged for someone to get a few Svarim or manuscripts, Ksavim, I don't know exactly what, and he gave it into the Rebbe. And the Rebbe called him, and the Rebbe said, the Rebbe called him in, or the Rebbe wrote a note, etc. And the Rebbe said, you're playing with fire. You took something from the library without permission from the Rebbe, the Shver, from my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe. You want to be safe? You want to be healthy? I'm paraphrasing. You better give those Sforim back, or those Kisvei Yad back. And look at that. This is my comment. On one hand, the Rebbe says he's not mavater any Sefer. Says Reb Zalman Gerari arranges to get some Sforim or Kisvei Yad out of the library, however he got it, and he gives it to the Rebbe. He didn't pocket it himself. And the Rebbe says, you better give it back. And so at this point, of course, he's fearful. He gives everything back and he apologizes. And then he goes to Rabbi Mendel Tenenbaum, and he shares with him what happened. And I know this, the person who told me he was in a sukkah when Rabbi Mendel Tenenbaum was there, Rabbi Shmuel David Reichik was there, and Rabbi Yosef Weinberg. I think on Shmini Atzeres they celebrated a certain Hatzalah that they had when they were running away from the Nazis in Mach Shemam. And Shmini Atzeres they always made during the day a Kiddush, and that was like a day for celebration. I don't know if it happened on Shmini Atzeres, but that was the day that they chose. They were all together in New York. Rabbi Reichik came from Los Angeles. Anyway, so Remendel, somehow it came into discussion about this, and they didn't know about it at all. So he just mentioned the first part of the story that I shared with you, and then he kept quiet, but they could see there's more on his heart. They said a little more l'chaim, they sang more nikunim, if I bring more, and the hours are continuing in the afternoon, Shmini Atzeres. And finally, Remendel says, okay, I'll tell you more. So he says, Reb Zalman Gerari came to me and he says, we have to somehow convince someone to go to the Alter Rebbe, Tzir Rebbe, and the Chamadina, the Frierdiker Rebbe's wife, and the Geraris, Chana Gerari, and to get the Ksavim, to get the keys, because this can't continue this way. So he asked Mendel, who do you think? And he said to him, I'm giving it over to you. I already tried and I got myself in big trouble. So he said, Rebbe Simpson. Have Rebbe Simpson talk to Rebbe Rifkin, because Rebbe Rifkin was very close to the Geraris and to the Frierdiker Rebbe and his Rebbe's in the Chamadina. So he is a good person to hopefully convince them. No, so Rebbe Simpson, as soon as he heard that something's needed of this sort, he's right there. And he went together with Reb Mendel Tenenbaum to the Rebbe. They went to his apartment, I believe it was on Schenectady Avenue, and they spoke to him, and Rebbe said, I would do anything for you, but this is something that's, a very difficult request. So Rebbe Simpson said, I know it's difficult, Rebbe. They were friends. They learned together in Lubavitch and everything else. And he says, but this is where it counts. So he said, okay, I'll try. And he went and he spoke to the people, and they said they understand, but this was given to them by their father and their husband, and they're not giving it away, and things should just run the way it is, with Reb Chaim Lieberman in charge of the library, etc., etc. So it did not work. Here ends the story. Why am I sharing this with you? Because, hey, Teves isn't just another day. The opposition over here was to the Rebbe being on equal footing as the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, and all the way to the Alter Rebbe. If they would have seen the Rebbe this way, of course they would have given him the keys. It's his. It's not his. He's representing Lubavitch, Chabad. But what happened over here is they saw it as a personal inheritance. So when Hey Teves comes, it's not a day to badmouth people and to show anger. That's not the Yiddish way, and it's not the Hasidic way, and it's not the Chabad way. But what is important to share with our people and congregants and friends and children and Talmidim and students is that this is a day in which, from on high, through a Gentile judge, Charles Sifton, he ruled that these Svarim belong to the community, which means that our community has a Rebbe on par as the previous Rebbe and the previous Rabbeim, and the movement and the Hasidus continues ad bias Mashiach Tzidkenu. And that's why this day is as great, maybe even greater, and I'm not going to now go into philosophical Hasidic ideas. Let's say as great as Yutes Kislev and Yud Beis Tammuz. And remember, again, Yutes Kislev is against Chassidus, Yud Beis Tammuz against Yiddishkeit, and Hey Teves was against a Rebbe. And from on high, the Eibishter said, and this is the Rebbe emphasizes in the Sichos, that it came into the Gashmis, the physical plane on earth, where a judge who wasn't Jewish made a ruling, and he understood the depth of the issue, that there is a continuation of Rebbe Chabad, and that's why we celebrate this day, and that's why it's a special day, and in a way, it's the holiest day of the year for us, Lubavitch Chassidim. May the Eibishter help that we should go in the ways of our holy Rabbeim, the way of the Rebbe. We should continue and share with the world the wonderful gift that he gave us and gives us. And this way will be Zeicher immediately to bias Mashiach Tzidkenu. We will only have good health and parnosa and sheduchim, and ultimately be reunited with our Rebbe and all the Rabbeim through Tchias HaMesim, B'Korev Mamish, Amen v'Amen.